You have your palmetto leaves and the Florida State Seal. Dedicated on July 3rd of 1963, centennial of the Civil War. When I told you about there's a lot of strain about Southern monuments coming up here, that holds true for a long time. You had Virginia in 1917, North Carolina in 1929, but the rest of the state monuments don't start popping up until the 60s and the 70s. Tennessee's doesn't go up until 1982.
Wow.
It's going to take a long time. You know, these wounds are healed in a way, but in a way they're not. And in a way, as historians, we still fight these sort of things out, and that's when people grimace when you say Lee with the wrong look in your eye. In a way, it still runs there, and it's an undercurrent in our society. The monumentation is a real good example of how that works out. Now, the monuments are placed here, yes, where they fought or where the assault started from. In this case, the Confederate monuments, they'll place, this is where the Floridians were on the second and the third day when they're getting ready to launch assaults towards Cemetery Ridge. This is about the center of where the Florida Brigade was on the afternoon of July 2nd when they're getting ready to pull off and they're heading towards Cemetery Ridge. Cadmus Wilcox's and Cemetery Ridge is on the other side of the woodbine. You would see it as we pull off, and you'd see it over there. Cadmus Wilcox's Alabama Brigade, this is Richard H. Anderson's division of Ambrose Powell Hill's Corps in the Army of Northern Virginia. Wilcox's brigade is just over there with the Alabamians. And because Edward Perry, who had been the brigade commander, I told you he picked up typhoid fever after Chancellorsville. Colonel David Lang is in command of the brigade here. He was the senior colonel. He was from the 8th Florida. And Anderson was very nervous about that. You know, he instructed Cadmus Wilcox to keep David Lang under his wing. When Lang got orders, they were guide on Wilcox's right, follow Wilcox, and you'll receive no further orders. All right, so we've got about 740. I think these numbers were a little off. 740, 742 Floridians. And on that afternoon of July 2nd, they're going to rise up, they're going to crest over the ridge, the 2nd, 5th, and 8th, in perfect line, and they're going to move forward and immediately come under artillery fire. And they're going to be charged, they're going to be moving against federal positions, Cemetery Ridge, the Emmitsburg Road more specifically for them. When I showed you that map that showed you the assumed location of Union forces, that's the assumption Lee operates on. Like I said, he doesn't know the line goes all the way down. He doesn't expect anybody to be there at all. And one of the things that James Longstreet is looking at and seeing, he doesn't expect people to be there, and he certainly doesn't expect what he sees when these people start coming forward. The Union forces are 600 yards in front of him. And it's because Daniel Sickles had pulled his 3rd Corps off Cemetery Ridge. He pulled them off the defenses on Round Top, and he pulled them forward onto the ridge where the Peach Orchard and the wheat fields sit. We're going to drive through there. Sickles' reasoning was thus, was that the ridge line was in his front. He was in a low area. You'll see it when we drive through it. He was afraid the Confederates would post artillery and blow hell out of the 3rd Corps. So he moves the whole 3rd Corps forward. In theory, a decent idea, yes, but what Sickles doesn't take into account is he doesn't have enough men to cover the line effectively. He's only got 10,000 men in the 3rd Corps. The area is just too big for him to cover. And that's why the Confederates are going to make mincemeat out of the 3rd Corps on the afternoon of the 2nd day, and the Floridians are going to take part in that. When they move out, they get to the Emmitsburg Road. When they move out, they get to the Emmitsburg Road. Okay. And what they're going to see is the brigade of Joseph Carr, Federal Brigade. There's 26th Pennsylvania and the 1st and 11th Massachusetts are there. They're going to move in. They go very splendidly, as Colonel Lang says, through the artillery fire, keeping the ranks together, keeping morale up. And they're going to slam right into the tail end of the 26th Pennsylvania, and they're going to flank it. You know, just like I showed you a flank and how we talked about Archer's Brigade. Well, the Floridians are going to do that to the Pennsylvanians here. And they're going to push them back off the Emmitsburg Road, and they're going to regroup, and they're moving past. And these guys are real winded at this point in time. Lang writes about the men being tired. They need a minute to rest and regroup. So Lang attempts to marshal his forces, make sure everybody's in line together. And as soon as they get ready to move off, they see Union reinforcements that are coming across just on Cemetery Ridge. Lang talks about, I was so close to the last line of entrenchments. I was almost there. And then all of a sudden, artillery and infantry support comes up for the Federals. And the artillery battery wheels into line and starts to blow great gaps into the Floridians. And then the 19th Maine Regiment from Harrow's Brigade of the 2nd Corps is going to come out on their flank and unleash a volley into them, and the position's becoming untenable very quickly. Lang looks around and can't see Wilcox's brigade anywhere, so he's going to have to retreat and give up all the ground that he had won and come right back here to this ridge line. And then on the afternoon of the 3rd day, with the grand assault, we'll talk about it near one of our last stops this afternoon, they're going to take part in that too. They're going to lay down on the other side of the tree line, Federal artillery, is going to be sending shells over them for quite some time. There are accounts of at least 5 or 6 guys from this brigade dying of heat stroke, just sitting there waiting. They find them dead, foamed at the mouth, laying out there in the sun for hours. And then think of the morale deflator. You're laying out there in the sun, you're flat on your face, and all you hear is artillery exploding everywhere. It had to be terrifying to sit there for a couple hours like that before you're ordered to move. After Pickett's men step off and move forward, about 20 minutes later, Lang's brigade gets up, and they start to move forward out towards Cemetery Ridge once again. And what they find out there waiting for them in the field is a brigade that was never expected to be there, Vermont troops under George Stannard. And George Stannard's brigade is a lot bigger than Lang's Floridians are down here. And what Stannard is able to do is just hit their flank immediately and envelop them. They suffer 40% casualties on the first day. They suffer more casualties on the second day, and that's how you get to that 61.5% roughly casualties that the Florida regiments are going to suffer here. They also lose 2 of their battle flags. The 2nd and the 8th Florida both lost their flags here at Gettysburg. We don't know what happened to the 2nd's battle flag. We know it was on display in Philadelphia, and then it disappeared at some point in 1863. It's never been recovered. Nobody knows what happened to it. Quick, interesting story about a Floridian who was born near Live Oak, Florida, who participates here at Gettysburg. He's a member of the 2nd Florida Infantry. His name is Lewis Powell.
Oh, no.
Have you heard of Lewis Powell?
Yeah.
All you know is...
No.
Okay. Well, if you haven't, some of you do, some of you don't. If you haven't, I'll share. Lewis Powell is a member of the 2nd Florida Infantry Company I here, and he's wounded in the hand fighting on the 2nd day. He's eventually captured, and he's cared for by Union soldiers here, Union surgeons, and he's sent, like a lot of the wounded Confederates are that the Union Army takes in as prisoners, sent down to general hospitals in Baltimore. Well, he escapes from the hospital in Baltimore. And at some point in time, he joins Mosby's Partisan Rangers. Colonel John Singleton Mosby with the 53rd Virginia will fight with them towards the end of the war. And then he'll be in Washington, D.C., living under the name of Lewis Payne. Lewis Payne of the Lincoln assassination conspiracy fame. And he's going to be the one that tries to stab Secretary of State William Seward to death.
Excuse me. We have a student from Florida, and he needs a picture of his mom. You want a picture? Go up there. What button do you press?